Thank you for doing this, sir.
Pleasure.
To start with, can you please tell me your name and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Bartek, and I'm a founder of L2 I used to work for many years for MakerDAO before, one of the biggest DeFi protocols on Ethereum, one of the earliest protocols, and for the last 4 years I'm 100% dedicated to L2, which we consider to be a sort of a community-run watchdog, if you like, that monitors the current state of L2 ecosystem with the particular emphasis on risk.
Gotcha, good. So that brings two questions to mind. You decided to move from MakerDAO to L2 because you thought, I'm guessing that you thought that this watchdog was a very important thing to have for the ecosystem?
It's actually, there was a very gradual transition, if you like, because I was actually working on a multi-chain strategy for MakerDAO. MakerDAO is known from doing things super early in the cycle.
That's
and
true,
they like leading, certain things like formal verification, for example. And at that time, there was not so many other chains. Rollups were just about to be launched, the first ones, from Optimism, Arbitrum, zkSync. And
what a time.
Yeah, what a time. And we simply wanted to move DAI to different chains. And the thing is that on the mainnet, DAI is decentralized entirely. It's immutable, cannot be censored, and cannot be captured, right? It's like, it used to be the decentralized stablecoin. So moving it, to L2, we wanted to make sure that it doesn't lose all these properties, right? And we came to realize very quickly that we need to analyze trust assumptions of these constructions that were emerging at the time very carefully. So the first L2 type of list, if you like, of different tools was on my spreadsheet, right?
Oh wow, cool.
On my computer. And I tried to send it out to people. Maybe 4 people in the world actually saw it, and then I figured, well, I put a lot of work into sort of looking at these systems. Maybe I'm gonna make it public. And we created a website, and then the avalanche kind of started because we had more and more systems to track. We had to build the automation, we had to hire people, we had to get some external funding, to get it all rolling. And eventually I was like, gee, I'm doing 100% that, and if I don't focus on that, well, there will be no resource like L2 and slowly but surely we came to realize that this is an essential resource that is actually needed for the the rollup-centric roadmap to succeed. And that is because we want these constructions to be almost as secure as Ethereum itself, right? Otherwise, they are just chains secured by some multisigs, and that's a common critique from other ecosystems. We understand that. And we're here to essentially show everybody, the truth, but also a roadmap. You may start your L2 with multisig essentially governing everything, right? So I'd say that these claims for these chains are correct. However, there's a clear path towards full decentralization,
right?
Because the whole goal essentially is to make sure that it's actually Ethereum through the smart contracts that is verifying these chains. And that's hard, right? We call it the proof system. You write the proof system as a smart contract. In my opinion, these smart contracts are by far the most complicated smart contracts that have ever been written on Ethereum. Takes years to write them, but we know it's possible, right? We know it can be done, and we know that there is a clear path towards making rollups fully decentralized. And once you do that, there's no reason really to think that there is something fundamentally different than smart contracts on Ethereum themselves, right? Because they are also programs. So it's like, these are rollups. You can think of them also as programs, just that they are much more complicated in a way, right?
It's a very interesting way of framing it. I've never thought of it like that.
Okay.
I like it.
Well, so once you start thinking about it like that, then you can say, well, they're just part of Ethereum, just as much as smart contracts are part of Ethereum, right?
Right.
They're not
Yeah.
like bolt-ons that are, plugged and that they don't constitute Ethereum. Ethereum is everything, right?
Yeah.
It's like underlying infrastructure that allows you to build smart contracts on top of it. Some of them are immutable, some of them are not, and so are rollups, right? Some of them today are immutable, most of them are not yet,
Right,
but
yeah.
they can be. And we are here to sort of like show the community where we are and provide a certain guidance towards where we want to be.
Yeah. And I do think that L2 Beat is, as you said, functions, has a very important function as a watchdog, as a way to make it very clear for everybody what these L2s are currently and where they need to go to become what they purport that they're going to become, right? So in some ways to be held accountable, right?
Yeah, that is exactly what we're trying to do, because as I said before, these contracts are super complicated. It took us years to develop methodology, automation, tooling. No person in the world would be able to do it manually. There's just way too many of them, and they keep changing.
Yeah.
So our current estimate is that given the sheer amount of systems out there already in production, and the rate, the frequency, how often they upgrade, we get on average at least one update a day.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's like a daily stream of things that are changing, and we have to react. Right?
Yeah.
So for that, it took us years to get to where we are, and we have to constantly improve.
Yeah.
Because if you did not have that type of automation, the moment you created this list would be out of date.
Right, exactly.
right? And if it's out of date, then it's not particularly useful, is it? Because you're essentially showing information that's potentially not true. Whereas every single piece of information that you see on L2Beat, you can independently verify yourself. And so far, fingers crossed, we've never ever made a false claim.
Oh, cool. Very, very cool.
So, from time to time, we have those funny battles with the community, with some marketing departments, they might be actually more confused about what their engineering delivered than we are, because we can check on chain, we read the code, we look exactly what's going on, and we say, hi guys, maybe you think you're decentralized, but not yet.
That's great.
Yeah, so it kind of works, and this is all because Ethereum is fully transparent, and every single claim that rollups make must be verifiable.
Yeah.
Independently and objectively.
Yeah, very cool. So you mentioned when you first started, as you gradually, this became more and more important, that you needed funding. Where does most of your funding come now?
It's a public good company. It's a bit of an evolution. So we've experimented with a lot of ideas initially, like every single startup. So the first 2 years were a little bit chaotic. We got funding from different sources to get us running.
Yeah.
However, eventually, once we kind of recognized, how important is this project for the community, we kind of decided that we want to be mission-driven, and we announced that we're a public good company. That means essentially that A, we're funded 100% by the community through grants.
Wow.
And B, we don't get or take any investors' money, because we have no intention to magnify it, right?
Yeah.
And we think that as long as the community needs that service, the grants will continue to support us. If the Ethereum community, for whatever reason, decides that we're not that needed by simply refusing to fund us, then our mission will be over.
Right. Yeah.
right? So
Mission complete.
yeah, mission complete in a way. You know, maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way.
Right,
you know, we're
right,
gonna
yeah,
see,
yeah.
right?
I was
The
thinking
future is unknown.
optimistically, right? Yeah. Right. Cool. I was wondering if you could take me from like that, if you remember that initial spreadsheet. You probably had some metrics that you were following,
Yeah.
like trying to track to measure the decentralization of rollup to now, and how has it changed or evolved from your initial conception to now?
Right. So as any idea, in my opinion, it just keeps evolving along with the space, which is in a constant flux, right?
Yeah.
Because the design space for rollups is unlimited, so we have to adjust. And when we see new constructions appearing, once these constructions become popular, you know, we also need to adapt. So today, just to give you a concrete example, there are more and more rollups that are considering using TEs.
TEs, yeah.
You know, they proof systems, and we're having a lot of conversations in the past few days whether, you know, how should we treat TEs, right? Because like your intuition is probably that, you know, they should be treated as more secure than just simple claims by multi-sigs, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, this is not a proof system in a sense that it's not Ethereum that's actually verifying. It's like an external device, hardware device.
And then how do you verify that it's being used and used
well,
properly?
you get a station from Intel essentially, right? So you know you get a Intel signature, and essentially you have to trust that, you know, Intel is not a malicious actor, right?
Right.
So this is probably not exactly the trust assumption that we want to have, but it's certainly better than trusting some anon developers who may or may not be malicious. You don't know. We kind of assume that for Intel to be malicious, some state actor would have to be involved.
Yeah.
That's my personal assumption.
Right.
And clearly that is a very, very different risk than trusting anon developers.
I see.
So the framework is constantly evolving. The thing that I had on my spreadsheet was very, very different than the thing that we have today. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, if we keep running for the next few years, if we talk in 2 years' time, you know, I bet that our framework will be also very different because we have to adapt, right?
How many inputs, in general terms, did you go from the beginning to now, like to kind of create the score? Or
generally the basic mental framework did not change significantly, because the basic mental framework was, like I said before, you know, we wanted DAI to be permissionless.
Right.
And what it means is that if you put DAI on these chains, you know, you should be able to get it out no matter what.
No matter what, yeah.
Right? That's the whole idea. So the mental model that I always had, you know, for these types of constructions is like, you know, imagine that you're in Vegas, you know, you go to a casino, right? You buy the chips, and then you play, right, in a casino, but you're not using money, you're using chips because it's more convenient.
Right.
For whatever reason, it's more convenient. The main reason is that, you know, the settlement is like local, right? You're like within this little bubble.
Also, though, there's psychology there. The casinos know that if you're using a chip, you don't associate that clearly with money, so it's easier to spend and lose.
I mean, it's different, but you know, but the point is that, you know, maybe. I mean, you don't need banks to settle chips, right? You can play roulette, you know, internally, and you know, everything's fine. No bank is involved, right? So you don't sort of put, you know, this pressure on the banking system because people are like constantly trading these chips, you know, in a highly volatile kind of manner. It's like trading essentially, and then eventually you want to go out and redeem your chips, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, you know, you want to have cashier that's actually there, and you want to make sure that he's got enough liquidity to pay for your chips, because otherwise, you know, you'll be like left with essentially plastic, right?
Exactly.
Which is not super useful. So I don't think, you know, this mental model fundamentally changed from where we started. So we want to make sure that you cannot be censored, and your withdrawal cannot be censored if you want to, you know, like move out your money, and essentially, you know, you cannot be kind of rugged by the chain operator, right? So they cannot steal, and these are the main two fundamental risks that we're trying to assess. So operator should not be able to steal your money, and they should not be able to freeze your money.
Very cool. Yeah,
and
that makes a lot of sense.
that's pretty much it, and from that, all the other properties of rollups kind of like emerge, because they have a certain construction. So now you wonder, okay, so what happens when the operator is down? How do you actually withdraw your money, because there's no sequencer, let's say. So maybe now you have to become your own sequencer or something, right? So we look at those little things, like what's going to happen when the operator is down. But essentially, I think at the end of the day, you should not have to trust multisigs to get your money out.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more questions and I'll let you go. You mentioned earlier that you noticed a trend for projects incorporating TEEs, trusted execution environments for people at home. Have you noticed any other major trends in L2s?
Yeah, so I think, and this is something that I covered in my presentation at DEF CON, 4 years ago when we started creating rollups, the teams, the main focus was on proof systems. And like I mentioned before, it's like super hard, right?
Yeah.
These teams, spent months and years, trying to actually get it right. It's not easy, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, we didn't have a lot of rollups. I think today we ended up in this, strange kind of place where you can, in theory, launch a rollup with a click of a button, because there are rollup as a service providers, and we are going for the quantity in a way, right?
I see.
But
proliferation of L2s.
Yeah, exactly. However, almost all of these constructions, not only do they don't have a proof systems, but their security setup, meaning all those multisigs that can upgrade and whatnot, they are like super, super small, and essentially you're trusting, some random actors. I'm actually not subscribing to this vision personally, and this is one of the reasons, why we're like super motivated to kind of like expose, these trust assumptions, and we hope that this avalanche of low quality rollups will stop in a way, because it doesn't really have the overall community, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like as if you were allowed to launch your own little bank. But you keep forgetting that it's actually people that you don't know that are putting their coins into this bank, right?
Yeah.
So if anything happens, you'll be somewhat liable, for whatever is going to happen with that. So I think, frankly, that we need to stop a little bit, right? We need to grow up and make sure that we don't lose our original focus. And like I said before, the original focus is to make sure that rollups are as secure as Ethereum with no additional trust assumptions. We don't want multisigs, right?
Yeah.
So if anyone says, especially from the outside of the Ethereum community, that rollups are just multisigs, I think they're missing, the most important aspect of what we're trying to do. The Ethereum community, in my opinion, also does not want these multisigs, to manage the rollups, right? We know how to do that. It's just that now we have to push the community towards that, right?
So you've kind of talked about it a little bit, but what do you and you said you don't subscribe to this idea of just this kind of Cambrian explosion of L2s as the future. What do you see the future being? Or what would you like the future to be?
Well, first and foremost, I like the future to be secure, right? If these constructions are not secure, then I think we kind of failed. I also think that the future. In the future, we need to make sure that we remain incredibly neutral, because if we're not, then we have also failed as a project, right?
Yeah.
I truly believe that what we're doing here is fundamentally different from the traditional world, in that no one should be excluded. So I'd say that for me, we will succeed if we can scale Ethereum, however, scale in a secure and decentralized way, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to scale if you don't care about one of these issues.
Yeah, because then it's just like Web 2.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly,
that's,
right? Web 2 scales much better than Web 3.
Yeah, and that's a
right?
solved
We know
problem
how to,
already. Yeah.
Well, exactly, right? We know exactly how to do that. You can record, the
AWS
video on your
yeah.
phone. Like billions of people can do it, at the same time, and the Web 2 can handle the load, right?
Yeah.
So it's a problem that's been solved in Web 2.
Yeah.
How do we scale in Web 3 without centralizing? That's a tough problem. And I think especially Bitcoin and Ethereum community are like laser focused on scaling without losing decentralization, whereas some other communities, they may have different values, and maybe different use cases will require different platforms, right?
Yeah.
So
very interesting. Okay, so sorry, one last question, just because does L2Beat cover just EVM, or are you going to cover like other things, like for example, Bitcoin L2s or Solana L2s, or?
Right. So at the moment, we're funded by the Ethereum community. So our focus is to cover the Ethereum ecosystem and having only so much time and so many people, we are finding it extremely hard to even track what's happening on Ethereum. Having said that, we're 100% open source, and I would encourage other communities from other ecosystems to look at how we're actually doing this. Our tooling, you can try to use our tooling. Obviously, if you were to do something similar on, let's say, Solana, you would have to port our tooling to Solana. You would have to have something similar to Ethereum as a smart contract source code verification and so on, because we need source code, for all these systems. But I would encourage other communities to do something similar, because otherwise, it's free for. I mean, people, end users, there's just no way they would be able to understand, right? All these, complicated systems. It's just too complicated, and we think that we're just an example of how the community can self-regulate without the external regulator telling us what to do.
You're doing a great job, and I cover the Bitcoin space a lot, and haven't been impressed by pretty much any L2 I've seen. And man, it would be nice to have something like this
and I think
as
there
a
are
watchdog,
some efforts.
right?
I think that there are some efforts, right?
Yeah.
But I would advise all these teams to make sure that they focus on claims that can be objectively verified. I've seen a lot of dashboards, which to me they kind of resemble my initial spreadsheet. You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying,
it's like claims taken out of the white paper.
Right.
Right.
I see.
So, most of these claims, cannot be objectively verified, meaning that you don't know as a user, whether this is just a marketing, claim, or this is actually really implemented, because, that's a huge difference, right?
Huge difference, but also, credit to you and L2Beat, being able to point to this thing and say, no, we verified it, is really difficult. It's a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah.
Anyway, sir, thank you very much for your time. I know you're very
much.
busy, and I love the work you're doing, and I hope the community continues to appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.